Hi, so I'm Michael, that's Zach, and this is Chase. And our topic was about the demise of the bluefin tuna. So basically, what the problem is that it's basically about overfishing. Many countries are overfishing the bluefin tuna, specifically Japan. And because of this, the fish doesn't have much opportunity to reproduce to get their population back up, and they're continually declining while the demand for the fish is continually increased over the years. So as you can see here, this is a graph that shows the populations of the bluefin over time, and as you can see, it's on a steady decline. So many factors that goes into the declining population is the lack of legislation that protects the fish. Many of the governments support the overfishing and don't actually want to make it illegal because the economies rely on the fish. And like Japan, the bluefin tuna is a big part of their culture, and it's a big part of their culture, and it takes up a lot of their culinary diet.
So there are several effects from the bluefin tuna decline in population. So basically, the ecosystem suffers greatly from this decline because the bluefin tuna is a keystone species, and since it's a keystone species, many other organisms and species in that ecosystem die too. Other animals in the ocean are also killed by the nets and basically the fishing supplies that are just abandoned in the ocean and left there. It causes conflict between governments. That some governments support support the fishing of the bluefin tuna, while some don't. So it causes some conflict. So there are also some solutions to this problem.
The first solution is farming bluefin tuna. And farming bluefin tuna has many pros that include sustainability for the fish. And as the bluefin tuna farming increases, the bluefin tuna fishing industry decreases, which is great for population rising. And the authors of a scientific alternative to moratoria for rebuilding depleted international tuna stocks believe that there still needs to be more scientific evidence to prove this. However, an increase in BFT farming numbers over the years has proved to be a valid solution. The author of Farming Bluefin Tuna Through Thick Stalks and Thin interviewed Hidemi Kumai, a BFT farmer who explained why an alternative like farming fish is not an effective way to get people to fish less. He not only said that he is paid 3 times less per fish, but also explained that some sushi chefs here in Kushimoto, where he lives, sniff at the ranch bluefin tuna, saying it yields a fatty meat that does not taste as good as the wild variety. But Mr. Kumai's couch potatoes are 10% lean and 90% fatty. And that's one of the major problems with the fish is they have more fat because they don't get to swim as much as the other fish that are caught in the ocean. However, another limitation of the fish is that only 80 tons of the 40,000 tons of bluefin tuna consumed by Japan come from farming each year. But if farming industry increases, that could change and would be very beneficial. And if that becomes popular, one BFT farmer said that, by the name of Umami, said that he gets about $42 million in sales for bluefin tuna, from farming bluefin tuna each year, and it makes a profit of $10 million. So that would be a pretty nice profit if you were a farmer, and lots of people could get that job if they had enough money to start it off from the ground. And profits like these could boost in Japan's economy and benefit them from fishing more bluefin tuna. The second solution is BFT stem cells. And the author of A New Way to Fish wrote about BFT in the lab. But if they can figure out from the beginning to an end, and perhaps more importantly, figure out to scale up the process into a viable commercial venture, the folks at Finless Foods hint at almost a utopian reversal of fortunes for humans, fish, and the environment. This stem cell, just as he said, the stem cell way is a very valid solution that still needs more research, but with more research, it could be the best solution, and be the absolute answer for the problem. However, the cons of this is the public will have to accept the product, and thinking about if something's built from scratch, many people might not want to eat it because it's not natural and it's scientifically made. But in one study conducted several years ago, that when cultured meat was entering public consensus, it indicated that only a quarter of the participants would be willing to try the product, but over time people would be able to accept it and it would be much better. And some implications of the product is that if people start using the grown fish, the amount of BFT fishing will go down and therefore increasing the population. Lastly, with stricter legislation, there's many pros because grants can be made and laws would have to be followed. And there's not a lot of legislation right now in Japan, and what there is, they don't agree with it, and that leads to the cons because many laws in Japan are not followed, and there needed to be a strict reason for them to follow it. And implications may be that everyone follows the law. If that happens, there would be new regulations that talk about BFT thriving and less catch limits and higher cost. Now, the effects of the solutions. Chase, you can go over that.
So some of the pros is that farming is that it's sustainable and it reduces the fishing of the wild bluefin tuna. And some cons is that it's a different taste because there's less fat than wild fish. And some limitations is that high-end companies prefer actually to use the wild fish as opposed to the farmed fish because of these fat concentrations. And it also creates unemployment for some of the bluefin tuna fishermen. Also, some implications is the population of the wild bluefin tuna increases, and it also increases new jobs for the bluefin tuna farmers. So this is a chart that shows just the increase of the fish population due to the farming. So then the next thing is the bluefin tuna stem cells. So there's also many pros and cons to this. So some pros is that it's a more successful breeding program. Some cons is that it's not necessarily going to be implemented right away in the industry. Some limitations is that it's way before its time. So there hasn't been much study done on this topic, and there hasn't been much testing. And some implications is the decrease of the overfishing of the tuna, and there's a more successful breeding program. And then the last thing is stricter legislation, and there's also many pros and cons to this. So some pros are that there's official rules and puts pressure on the people to break the law, and they can result in jail time and fines. Some cons are that the laws are not necessarily enforced by the Japanese officials, and approving of each law takes a very long time. Some limitations are that the laws are always broken, and they take a long time to be approved. And implications is that the wild bluefin tuna will thrive under protection from the government.
Okay, so out of all these solutions, our group decided that farming bluefin tuna was the most plausible solution to help bluefin tuna population. And there are several reasons for this. One of which is that, unlike the other solutions, this helps the bluefin tuna and people. It helps bluefin tuna obviously by raising them in farms so people don't have to fish in the ocean to catch the wild bluefin tunas. But also it gives jobs at the farms, so it can help the economy. And also, if it's made commonplace, it can reach the bluefin tuna demands all around the world. It's just that since it's not commonplace just yet, the farms can't really keep up with the demand, so people still have to turn back to the oceans. And it's also already being done, like stem cells that need a lot of research to be implemented. It's already being done, so people already know the basic way